Hey G, just letting you know the recording has started. For everyone, we're currently in a cafe and having macchioli, and I had a few questions on crypto and outlooks on a few things. So we'll get going. Are you ready, G?
I am ready.
Cool. So, as an early investor, you favored companies with dividends, low debt, and disliked growth companies. For example, Netflix due to their high PE ratios, right? Yet many crypto projects yield zero revenue. So has your perspective evolved on this topic?
I think analyzing using the company framework can only make sense on security like DAOs or protocols, and that does not apply to store of value crypto, NFTs, and most tokens, as many have explicit mandates to not be a security and therefore never having any obligation or desire to pass through value to holders.
Yeah, okay. Is that why you advocate for crypto projects to pay out dividends rather than buyback tokens? Why the preference for dividend yields, though? Especially when you can synthetically create this by selling a portion of your holdings during the buy and burn to get a sort of dividend.
Yeah, I believe the desire for token buybacks is driven by selfish tax concerns. If it's the same, then why not pay dividends and let holders buy back more tokens themselves, lol? There are many reasons, but I would say the biggest is going concern. A dividend paid out is safe from the remaining value in the coins going to zero if they fail to perform, and majority of them do fail to perform.
Isn't it better that the money is retained by token holders than the government? So why do you call tax concerns selfish rather than optimal? Also, about your going concern, if there is going concern, isn't a buyback better as lots of liquidity to exit during buybacks? And rather than a dividend where the profit is distributed to everyone, including people who didn't really believe in the going concern and deserve to hold these coins to zero, in my opinion. As an intelligent investor, shouldn't I prefer this?
Yeah, well, the frame of reference here is not between a crypto investing tax resident and their government, but rather between token holders who do not have the same penalties of dividend taxation, yet are still herded into the suboptimal choice of buybacks. If it's a going concern, then buybacks are a terrible idea because everything collectively owned goes to zero, in which case the survival strategy should be to throw value out of the building before it collapses. I would think that an intelligent investor should recognize that absent tax concerns, everyone would prefer a dividend over a buyback, unless the company has the ability to reinvest at higher rates of return, in which case a buyback is not done either. The retained earnings are invested rather than used for buybacks or dividends. Mechanical buybacks have no ability to ascertain rich or poor valuations, and would mean that even at extremely rich valuations, the optimal choice is to buy back. That's rather illogical, don't you think?
That makes sense. You once also said fundamental analysis tells you what to buy. Technical analysis tells you when to buy it. However, it seems you updated your views on fundamental analysis being less important due to massive amounts of intervention in markets. Has any of your views on technical analysis changed? Outside the popular charts, you tweet such as hodl waves. Do you believe there is any merit to drawing lines on charts?
Not really. I still think of TA as a fluffy aid to optimize entries or exits. Although there might be some merits to practicing male astrology and many people swear by it, it is not something that I strongly believe in, nor I find very helpful.
I think you might get a lot of CT hate from answering this in that case, especially since so many influencers make a living from posting TA. But what is the reason for popularity of this male astrology, like you said? And why do successful quote unquote TA accounts garner such a large fan following? Is it because TA is a lot more digestible? So it has an appeal to wannabe traders who enter the space and want to feel like they are doing real work rather than gambling?
I do not want to trash talk TA because I think ultimately success of dark arts depends on the practitioner. It is just that in this case, the success rate to synthesize profitable TA traders is so disgustingly low, in my opinion, that it's practically impossible to justify as a mass market strategy to succeed. I don't know how the successful traders manage to keep winning, and I wish I had that skill, but I am part of the vast majority that suck at trading, especially based on TA.
Yeah, I definitely agree and relate to the sucking at trading part. But
Yeah.
yeah, for the next questions, I thought I'll move into crypto. For the last crypto cycle, I believe the first cycle till May played out close to what you expected, with BTC breaching all-time highs, bringing retail money in which you created the top. Were you surprised that we saw a double bubble and a second top in November 2021? And why do you think that happened?
Great question, actually. Yes, I was rather surprised about the second top. I have a firm stance that by almost all metrics other than price, the market had topped. I often share charts by Glassnode and look into Bitcoin, and most of the charts show that the peak was in May, not in November. The strength of the H2 rally was beyond my expectations. I suppose it was just driven by the alt L1 narrative.
Did FTX and Alameda using customer funds play a role in this? There's popular CT narrative that a lot of what has happened in the market can be thrown out and not studied for the next cycle as it was driven by fraud.
It is impossible to say, but I do think that's a good theory.
Okay, so what's your opinion on VC firms who invested billions of dollars in 2021 and 2022? Does G think they're smart, and why are they okay to burn so much money?
I feel that they all got high on their own supply. Did you see the list of VCs that were being plastered on Alt L1's DeFi and gaming projects? It was a cesspool of no-name nonsense funds spun up by a couple bros that rode H1 well and wanted to play the VC game of early and cheap round allocations. I do not think they are smart. In fact, I can't name any that launched in that era that is notable today. I have no idea why they are okay to burn so much money. I hope they still have money left, and they should buy my bags.
Understandable on no-name funds, but there was billions of dollars plundered by very reputable funds into obviously bad projects such as the 11th Alt L1 or unsustainable Ponzi-nomic play-to-earn projects, or even funding rounds of existing projects at ridiculous valuations. FTX Ventures being the prototypical example of a fund that burned millions of dollars or billions of dollars, but other reputable VCs such as A16Z, Target Global, etc., were burning a lot of money as well.
Personally, I only have negative things to say about funds that are not my own money or mostly own money. If these superstar fund managers could invest at scale, they should borrow money, pay funding, and internalize all the profits themselves. Not all the funds are bad, but I would say it seems rather obvious to me that most funds are just a free grift on the external money or a way to gain access rounds through syndication and get better terms. I do think that many did actually believe in the Alt L1 thesis, but then again, given their size, I feel like it was confirmation bias, because at least with an Alt L1 thesis, you just justify allocating huge size, but not so much for projects which are smaller.
Elon Musk said that crypto will survive, but it will be a long winter after FTX blew up. G replied saying that she believed the winter is over, calling the bottom. G was correct. So how'd you know that?
As smart and rich Musk may be, I don't think he was ever involved in crypto, other than memeing around with Dodge and BTC. At that time, the bear market had gone for months, and the idea that FTX would restart the clock seemed like too much of a fantasy bear porn scenario to me. I suppose it was just luck. If you're bullish in crypto, like a broken clock, you'll be eventually right.
Is this your humble Spartan side attributing this to luck, or is there more to it where a large liquidation event like FTX usually marks the bottom?
Well, I always talk about my higher dimensional hentai gods that peer into the future and whisper to me what will happen in riddles. But it seems everyone believes it as a joke. I mean, that couldn't possibly be the case, right? What even are hentai gods?
Yeah. So for the next question I've got, it's kind of crypto going forward. Will there be more crypto cycles in your opinion, and why do you believe so?
I do think there will be more crypto cycles. The 4-year BTC halving cycle has been an amazing cycle that seems to naturally sync with the human emotional and also financial markets bull bear cycle. As long as BTC is the number one crypto, I think the 4-year cycle remains the reference point.
So you don't believe in the shorter cycle theory and think 4 years is the refractory period in spite of more eyeballs and institutionalization of the space? Do you think this will change after the next cycle?
I think the period will still be 4 years, as long as BTC is in charge, but the peak will shift earlier as people realize the optimal strategy is to front run each other. If ETH usurps and holds that position firmly, I would say that the shortening cycle theory would have more weight and can be explored more seriously.
What do you believe will be strong drivers of the next cycle?
I think the financialization of crypto by TideFi will be a strong driver in the next cycle. This will be driven by access to crypto products in familiar TideFi wrappers and would attract a nice inflow of capital into the crypto market. I think intercountry settlement is still some ways away, but sure, insties could and would settle with each other over the blockchain.
Okay, so who are you expecting to come into the next bubble, retail or institutions? And what coins do you expect them to buy? Last time you expected retail to come and buy DeFi, but they bought dog money instead. Are you better prepared to be surprised next cycle?
Probably both. Yes, the expectation of them buying DeFi was simply too optimistic of me. I do think it was a huge overestimation of human ability that the new entrants would be able to move beyond meme coins. So I would guess that the next bubble, they will buy BTC/ETH and whatever other meme coins of the week with smart sales narratives. It is unfortunate, but a lot of coins are just too complicated for normal people to understand.
What about nation states? Do you expect to see small countries start buying BTC or ETH during the next cycle? And do you have plans to use them as exit liquidity?
I think we will see countries buy crypto in the future as their way of saying, hey, you fuckheads, I can see that you are printing money irresponsibly. Will it be the next cycle and will it be BTC ETH? I would be surprised if that happened, since it'd be sooner than I expect.
There are some eponyms that I think of as Jesus. I'm going to call them out and maybe you can divulge into them to give more details. One of them you always say is, I believe that the market functions in a way that large groups, aka the herd, are not able to realize profits.
People get angry about this one, maybe because they hate being cynical or just enjoy the waggly vibes. I suppose it depends if you view the markets as positive or zero sum. If everybody's wealthy, then no one is poor. Sure, there's absolute poverty and other absolute measures of wealth or quality of life, but I do think that wealth is mostly relative, and that means that not everyone can have it. If people can agree with me on that, then the only thing is just the percentage between the rich and the poor, those that make it and those that are the herd.
Yeah, that makes sense. Another one that you always say is normies only come in if BTC or ETH breaches all-time high. What about that?
From my interaction with normies, they perceive time very differently from us. Throughout the whole of H1 2023, normies I spoke to were saying how crypto is so over after FTX, not realizing that the market had been trending up. By the time the normies have been emotionally reset about crypto, they'll only know next year about it as it's about to, or have just breached all-time highs.
Nice. Another thing that you always say is get a Korean girlfriend when she starts buying at 20% premium to dump her and all your coins.
Korea, Lower Korea specifically, is a really interesting market. Although Koreans all learn English in school, their proficiency is not good enough that they can participate in Anglo social media platforms, like how the rest of the world communicates on CT. Because of this, they are actually very reliant on domestic key opinion leaders to spoon feed them international news and interpret it for them. And yes, along with the capital controls and limited trading venues, this makes Lower Korea an insanely herdy market, where if one sheep runs off the cliff, the rest will all follow. Maybe I am stereotyping and overgeneralizing though. Haha, I'm not sure if the kimchi premium will appear again, and if it does, would probably not be to such a large degree, but that would definitely be an interesting bonus signal to look out for. I believe capital controls have loosened a bit, and the arbitrage is more understood now, and will not ever get to such a degree as previously.
Yeah, thanks for that, Ansela G. Another one that you say is it's better to get punched in the face today than to have an infection for months, i.e. the faster and more intense the crash, the more likely it's a bottom. But if the crash is slow, then it'll just bleed down over a long time.
I think this is really about whether you are path dependent or independent. If it is going to happen anyway, it might as well happen now and we get it over and done with.
Yeah, rip off the Band-Aid kind of thing. I like that. You also mentioned when we spoke early last year that cascades are good because it forces out leverage longs such that they're completely wrecked rather than slowly adding margin and staying on life support, which burns more money that could be used to buy the bottom.
Yeah, I do think faster is better and more merciful compared to a slow and painful grind, but the market knows that as well. This is why I say that it is not just the magnitude of the bear that is important, but also the duration of it.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that makes sense. As another Jason, if I can call it that, you once said that you are not competing with smarter and more talented people that would beat you in a fair fight, but winning by playing a game that they didn't even know was going on. What games do you expect this to be going forward?
The game I am expecting would be the actual super cycle. I think people will fail to see how much recognition and progress crypto has made as an asset class and will unfairly and too harshly trade it as if it is an asset that is going to negative 90% again over its next bear market. And doing this is going to result in a lot of people being overly bearish and not having enough exposure and realizing, yeah, that was it.
Do you not believe that FTX washed away a lot of the progress that crypto made in the last cycle, especially in the US? How important do you believe US regulatory acceptance is for crypto as an asset class to truly make it?
Maybe I am wrongly downplaying the importance of the US, but I think since crypto is inevitable, it doesn't really matter too much in the long run. Eventually, they will accept it. Depending on where they want to sit at the table will determine how much weight they have in furthering their own agenda within global policy.
Gotcha. So is the next cycle going to be the super cycle that you mentioned before, the one which elevates crypto into a mainstream asset class, the intergalactic, globally synced cycle to the level of imperial palace in Tokyo, worth more than California style, participated by every country, person, and institution? Or are we still a few cycles away from that?
I would hope so, but hope is not a strategy. I think we are still a bit short of having all the pieces in place that would easily facilitate such a scenario happening, but we are slowly getting there.
What comes after the super cycle? Will edge be permanently reduced? And if so, is the next cycle the last chance for a lot of people to make it?
Regardless if it is a super cycle, returns will continue to be dampened. People simply just need to accept that if they're using the same vehicles, they will get lower rates of returns. It is because the asset has de-risked. That is why returns are lower. People looking for the many multiples of returns will have to take on much more risk and buy very risky stuff.
Yeah, that makes sense. You used to be a perma equity bear, but now you're claiming to be a perma equity bull. What are the reasons for this? Does AI play a part in this?
Do you want to be right or do you want to make money? For the longest time, I actually naively believed that the world will be destroyed by debt and fiat money printing. But I have come to realize that just because it would be right for things to happen in a certain way does not mean that it will. I do not think AI plays a big part in this.
Why do you not think it will happen? What do you believe is the most likely outcome now of all the debt and fiat money printing that has happened?
I think fiat money just continues to devalue. There'll be no great debt reset.
Do you travel outside of North Korea often? Has your travel changed since you got into crypto? Do you travel business class or stay in fancy hotels and stuff now?
I think traveling post crypto makes me reflect a lot on how ridiculously broken the crypto markets are. These days, I'm assigned to more low risk reconnaissance missions since I have a senior role back home. I do travel business class now, and I quite enjoy it since I do not need to huddle with fat people or get terrorized by crying infants. Perhaps it's just my poverty mindset, but I cannot really appreciate fancy hotels. I would say accommodation choice largely depends on my travel partners, and I would just accommodate. It is usually harder for people to adjust down than for the person with means and no strong preferences to adjust upwards.
Would you ever relocate from North Korea? If you could move to any country, Supreme Leader permitting, which country would you like to live in? Which country are you bullish on for the next 50 years?
Whenever I travel these days, I do compare cities and countries a lot and think to myself, would I like to live here full time or maybe just several months a year? It is ironic since I talk about Twitter so much about tax optimization, but I feel that for already rich people, that's a very distant factor when it comes to deciding where you would want to live. I'm very bearish on Japan as an economy and a place to invest for the next 50 years. Yet I still intend to maintain a residence there and visit yearly. Of course, doing it this way means you are never a tax resident of Japan, just a tourist that happens to have a house there. I mention this because the benefit of being rich is that you can have multiple houses and they don't need to be in the same country as the one where you are a citizen of. I am bullish on globally minded smaller countries that are managing their population Ponzi scheme well with the aid of immigration. I don't want to give any specific examples, but I think such a base would serve as a very good filter of countries that would be nice to live in.
What are your thoughts on AI and how it will change the world, our lives, and crypto prices?
The bulk of my experience with AI is enjoying AI generated hentai. I'm not sure how it would change the world, but I am enjoying it so far. I have no doubts that AI will have a huge impact to the world. But similar to all major tech innovations, investors seem to be front running the technology's impact in our lives.
Yeah, I actually agree with that. I used to think of crypto trading as a field for polymaths, requiring an understanding of technology, market dynamics, data analysis, game theory, etc. to succeed. However, when I spoke to you last time for some crypto career advice, something you told me was to pick a niche, wait for it to be in style, and hit it hard, and warned against the risks of being a generalist. In your trading style too, you often don't care about things such as meme coins, OI, etc., and are happy not to feel FOMO about missing trades related to this. Why is this the advice that you give to young people and potentially one that you employ yourself?
I think being a generalist was humanly possible in the past when the entire space was just so much smaller. But now that the industry has grown so much, there is just too much ground to cover for such a strategy to be optimally executed by most people, in my opinion.
You are one of the few investors in the space who want to welcome TradFi suits and centralized custodians and see the biggest threat being crypto fiat rails being cut. Can you talk more on this?
Yeah, most people in the space are massive LARPs that have never made money, and if they have never withdrawn it back to the real world to spend it. The idea that you can evade AML and yet make millions from meme coins and buy a reasonably sized house is actually retarded because that is not how the real world works. Yes, there are hacks in the system, and certain people living in certain places or have certain connections can game the system, but most people are just regular people. If crypto is ever cut off from the fiat rails, it very quickly becomes a lot less valuable.
Why has off-ramping crypto become so difficult? And what are some things you would advise people to do right now to make the future off-ramping easier?
Off-ramping is difficult because hard fee bros are salty, stupid fuckfaces. It is 2023 and there are still bankers that cope having missed out 2 to 3 cycles now because they were told by Uncle Warren that it's a scam. Yeah, it's a scam that if you buy it, you become rich. Capiche? To save face, many are holding out and sticking to the same speech that they've had for the past half decade that crypto is a risky asset with high money laundering risk. I'd say have a very clear record of everything that you have done so far, especially your very initial fundings and crypto purchases. The how of going from 1x to 100x is actually the less difficult part, especially if you know about the circuit city grift.
You mentioned before about monitoring ETH staking queue and LST discounts and how to use that to plan distribution. Can you elaborate on that a bit more?
I think it's actually pretty intuitive that once we start seeing the exit queue building up, the market is panicking, and that panic is probably going to head to LST discounts as people try to quickly exit and sell. It is possible that if everyone thinks this way, that it could be a false positive for the bull market being over. But I actually think it'll be a pretty strong indicator, at least this time around.
Nice. And something else that you've shared a lot of thoughts to me on that I think we can end on. Could you please share some final thoughts on estate planning?
People shit on sexes and C5, but my guess is that coins held with custodians are way more likely to be able to end up with your beneficiaries compared to coins held in self-custody. An interesting way to set things up is to have your will and list down which custodians you use. However, you do not need to keep the bulk of your coins there and think of it like just a framework of an inter vivos trust. You would transfer assets to the custodian that you no longer want to, self-custody, and would want it to be distributed according to your will. I can imagine that a dead man's switch based on proof of life transactions to prevent it from triggering can sweep all the assets in its on-chain address to a designated custodian's address if the proof of life transactions fail to come in. I think the biggest issue is that accessing coins is not easy for most people. And even if accessing coins can be done, safely extracting them and not getting scammed along the way is also another set of issues to worry about. I would think that for most people, just having a will and relying on centralized institutions to deal with your estate is the easiest way for most people to do estate planning, with very good odds of nothing going wrong in the process itself. After FTX, it is harder to say the custodians will still be around. But everything is a trade-off of risks.
Thanks so much, G. This has honestly been such a great conversation, and I really appreciate your time.
Thanks, G3. It's a pleasure.